So as far as the Patriot movement, and that's what LWN is, we are part of many patriots out there searching for the truth and delivering the news like it should be delivered. All right. Welcome, America. Hello, World Patriots. And it is another beautiful night here in Idaho, and we're ready to go here at LWN and pretty excited. I know it was, about a week ago, maybe a little over a week ago. I had a special guest lined up, ready to go. We were in the back trying to make sure that our mics and everything worked. And then I had a total debacle with the internet and wasn't able to have the show that night. So we had to cancel and reschedule. And Darin is back with us tonight from Montana. Looking very forward to this conversation that we're going to have tonight. And before we get started, just a little bit of housekeeping that I'd like to do. I just want to say thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. You guys are truly amazing with all the support that you're giving me here at LWN. All the shares on Facebook, I can't even believe it. So many of you people on Facebook have been sharing every one of my photos, every one of my videos. We just cracked 9,500 on Facebook today and still climbing. We're trying to hit 10,000 subs on Facebook. And I truly believe we can get very close to that by the end of this week. So thank you guys for that. And of course, thank you guys on Truth Social, Twitter, for you guys over on YouTube, for all you guys that keep retruthing, retweeting, and sharing all of our information out. I promise you it's making a massive, massive difference here at LWN. We're getting the word out there. I noticed that Rumble is also growing too. We put a couple of new videos up on Rumble. So thanks for checking that out and sharing that out. And for those of you who have been buying the merchandise in the last few days, thank you guys so much. And I really think that you guys are going to enjoy that merchandise. The coffee cups are amazing. Here's one of the coffee cups that I have here. Amazing. I got one of the t-shirts on tonight. You guys can check that out. That's the Second Amendment. I will not comply t-shirt. It's in the store as well. And then for those of you on Facebook who have been sending stars, which stars are basically like super chats, thank you so much for doing that on Facebook. And of course, the coffees. You guys are awesome for sending the coffees as well. Just thank you for all the support because it really does make a difference for us to continue to do what we do here at LWN, which is bring you guys interesting shows, great information, intelligent information, helping one another out, and just really putting the information out there. So thank you guys so much for that from the bottom of my heart. And I see Z-Man there in chat. Thanks for letting me up today, Z-Man. You guys over there, you and Diamond and Nikki B and the gang are awesome. Just really enjoy sometimes getting away from my daily routine and just hopping over and saying hello to everybody. So thanks for that, Z-Man. All right, I'm going to go ahead and bring Darin in tonight. Darin is part of, and I believe the co-founder of Restore Liberty. Right, Darin?
Yep, that's correct.
Well, it's a pleasure having you on tonight. I know the short story for everybody. Darin and I actually met at the Truth Summit 2022, and he met the whole team there. Did a couple of interviews with us, and I got his business card and said, hey, man, I'm going to reach out to you when we get back home and have you come on the show.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to be here too. It's and the good thing is, of course, you said co-founder, so my other co-founder is right up there, moving from Seattle to escape to Coeur d'Alene and a little bit of freedom. He's got some land along the lake, and so Montana, of course, and Idaho, we always had good connections before, but with Restore Liberty, we're neighbors again.
Awesome. So before we get into the definition of Liberty Bell, I'd just like for you to give our listeners a little bit of your background and how you got called to do what you're doing today.
Yeah, that's the right word for sure, to get called to do something, because I certainly didn't want to. Many of us who are involved, I think, in this fight across the country in a variety of ways, I have to be called to do this because we wanted to be doing something else. But I started out enlisted in the infantry in the Army 30-something years ago now, and got out, intended to go to college, start a business, get involved in that, but was very much called to back into the military, became an officer, and flew Black Hawk helicopters at that point for 22 years. And so over a course of a 28-year career, a variety of jobs, but 7 deployments between flying the DMZ between North and South Korea, North Africa, all over Eastern Europe, and then 4 deployments to Afghanistan. I retired in 2019 and said I'd had enough. My goal was to stay in Montana, never leave the boundaries of my favorite state, spend my days either jet skiing, snowmobiling, downhill skiing, whatever I wanted to do, and do what retired Army people do. That didn't work out very well.
Well, thank you so much for your service, Darin. Thank you so much. It's men and women like you who have served this great country, past, present, and in the future.
Well, obviously, he's got internet issues still going on, so I'll keep going while he reconnects. But my goal to be quiet after the military obviously didn't last. But in the process of starting what I called a neighborhood watch, and then grew into multiple counties in the state, people connected across the state, that neighborhood watch really kind of grew into a political group, multiple states. But that's what I was called to do, was along with my co-founder, Blaine Holt, who many of you may have seen on Newsmax, we started Restore Liberty because we thought that despite it being our title, it was also our mission. And we can go into that in detail later, but internet went down. I kept talking. Here we go.
I work all day on the internet, and I don't have any problems. In the minute that we go live, it's crazy.
Well, I'm pretty sure there's a 3-letter agency behind it, because you and I are obviously domestic terrorists of some sort.
Of course we are. We're talking about liberty. We're talking about freedom. That is the definition of a domestic terrorist. I've had people even attack me on Facebook and say comments like, well, if he's got liberty in his name, and if they're talking about being patriots, they're definitely terrorists. And I'm sitting there thinking, where did this come from? Well, it came from mainstream media, and it came from the left and their propaganda and indoctrination. That's where it comes from.
Yeah, and we're not afraid of that at all, frankly. In fact, the more flack we receive, the more we know we're over the target where we belong. And the beauty about being a veteran-founded organization, but certainly not veteran pure, that's not our intent, means that we've got lots of combat tours and nearly 60 years of military service behind us as co-founders, and we've seen a lot. They're not going to scare us away. And in fact, the more you come at us, the harder we're going to return at you with the message. And our message is a little unusual in some ways, because we keep emphasizing the fact that patriots aren't violent. The left is.
Correct. Well, let's read a little bit. Let's read a little bit of the history. I'd like to educate some of the viewers. Maybe some of you know this, maybe some of you don't. But let me read a little bit of the history of the Liberty Bell, because I thought it was very neat. Hold on just a second. We got some back feed. Let me mute you for just a second there, Darin, while I read this. Okay. So here's a little bit of the history of the Liberty Bell, folks. Tradition tells of a chime that changed the world on July 8th of 1776, with the Liberty Bell ringing out of the tower of Independence Hall, summoning the citizens of Philadelphia to hear the first public reading of the Declaration of Independence by Colonel John Nixon. The Pennsylvania Assembly ordered the bell in 1751 to commemorate the 50th year anniversary of William Penn's 1701 Charter of Privileges, Pennsylvania's original constitution. It speaks of the rights and of freedoms valued by people the world over, particularly forward-thinking of Penn's ideas of religious freedom, his liberal stance on Native American rights, and his inclusion of citizens in enacting laws. The Liberty Bell gained ironic importance when they put efforts forward to put an end to slavery throughout America, adopting it as its symbol. And here's something else that I found on the Liberty Bell. In 1746, construction began on what would become Pennsylvania's State House. This was colonial America's most prestigious public building at the time. In 1751, legislators commissioned a bell that would toll to celebrate important events or calling together. And it also, I think the last time it was wrong, folks, was on D-Day. Let me read this real quick. Thanks to modern computer modeling, many have a closer idea of exactly how the bell sounded when Benjamin Franklin heard it. In 1999, graduate students from Pennsylvania State University were able to digitally create a structural model of the Liberty Bell. With a computer model, they were able to mathematically equate the vibration of the bell and add sound, knowing that the tone was the bell was an E flat, and were able to come up with a fairly close approximation of the original sound of the bell, which I'll play here in just a minute. There have been several occasions in which the Liberty Bell was struck and the sound was recorded. One very special occasion was on D-Day, June 6, 1944, when the Liberty Bell was struck by Pennsylvania Mayor Bernard Samuel 7 times, 1 time for each letter in the word liberty, in the nationwide broadcast to announce that the Allied invasion of Europe on the beaches of Normandy and France. One last little piece that I want to grab right here, and I'll let Darin speak. A lot of people believe that the Liberty Bell fractured when they were ringing it on July 4th of 1776, but that's not true. It didn't ring until July 8th and marked the reading of the United States Declaration of Independence. Let's see, there was something else that I wanted to read. That was a mouthful right there. So there you have it. That's part of the history of the Liberty Bell. So let me unmute. There you are, Darin. So your thoughts on the history of the Liberty Bell? Because when you guys talk about restoring liberty to each American really has a little bit of a different meaning.
It does, and I think it's important that as a Christian man, first and foremost, that I recognize the fact that true liberty comes through Christ alone and nobody else, and I will not back away from that position ever. And I think we have to remember that the liberty that we're pursuing here, and not only as an example for the nation, but an example to the world, is transient compared to that for sure. But the Liberty Bell is one more example of a historical item in this country that I'm sure they would love to just remove from its pedestals and put in storage and try to forget about, like so many other things in this country right now. It makes it quite clear that just this one example that the founding of this nation is significant, and it's tied very much to biblical truths that we cannot get around no matter how much we hide it. I mean, Leviticus 25:10 is engraved on it. Biblical verses are on the walls of our statues in different monuments around the country, all over the place. So the eradication of history in this country is not going to be an easy thing, even though they're certainly trying to do it. But I think it's important that we teach these things in every outlet we can possibly get onto, and make sure that our youth and people of all ages, frankly, are reminded of the significant history behind everything in this country. Perfect? By no means. Many lessons that we've learned the hard way, and we should continue to learn. But to erase history means we don't learn anything.
Oh, that is great. So tell us what is actually written on the Liberty Bell there, Darin, because I know back when I was a kid in high school, I learned it, but here I am 47 years old, 30 years out of high school. I forgot what was written on the Liberty Bell, and it is biblical.
Yeah, I'll use for those listening, I'll use the English Standard Version. And since, of course, I'm quoting a biblical verse, if I have the option, I'm going to make sure that I do word for word from source and get it right. Leviticus 25:10 says, "And you shall consecrate the 50th year and proclaim liberty throughout the land to all its inhabitants. And it shall be a jubilee for you when each of you shall return to his property and each of you shall return to his clan." The focus there on the Liberty Bell itself is the proclamation of liberty throughout the land to all its inhabitants. And the key word there besides liberty is all. And when we fight for liberty, we're not saying that we're only fighting for people who would be considered, and we'll use the word patriots or whatever else. We want people to live in liberty in this country. And even if we disagree with them vehemently, they should be free to say and think what they want. But neither of us should be able to use the force of government to force our opinions into others and give them no choice but persecution.
You know, Darin, you've said something very important there that not a lot of influencers, not a lot of people say. I mean, we get so drawn into our own stuff that we kind of forget about the other side because we're so busy fighting the other side. But what you said is very powerful. We are fighting for the liberties and freedoms for even the people that persecute us, that hate us, that attack us. This is America, and they do have a right.
Hey, we lost him again. But yeah, we think in Restore Liberty that is a powerful thing. And we also think it's an unusual thing, and that we're willing to be the folks who are willing to display grace and mercy to those who may come after us and attack us and persecute us. That makes us different, but we're not ashamed to be there.
Amen. Showing people grace is a perfect example of what Christian men and women should be. And not everybody's willing to do that. So thanks for sharing that with us, Darin. So let's go into Restore Liberty and what it is that is your guys' mission statement, mission focus, and what does Restore Liberty all about?
Yeah, it's easy to say that our mission is our title, but it's a question of how do you do that, and it takes a lot of work. So we start out with some very simple premises that we want to be a multi-decade, multi-generational program to counter the efforts of Soros, the World Economic Forum, and many other agencies that, whether they be global or local, doesn't matter. If we're not willing to be in this fight for a long time, then we shouldn't be here. But we're not naive to the immediate problem that is going on right now, too. And we are nonpartisan, truly nonpartisan. If you're a Democrat who upholds the Constitution, then we'll get behind you. If you're a Republican that does as well, same, because both parties are violating their oath on a routine basis. So we say a couple things, that we have to be in the long haul, but we have to fight now as well. We like to endorse candidates who are truly constitutionally minded. The lesser of two evils is just not something we're going to get involved in because it's still evil, and why would we put our name to that? We want to be a place where people can come and have a trusted group of folks to look at candidates and our endorsements, regardless of party. We recognize, of course, that the uniparty exists specifically at the national level, but we make our decisions and we get our intelligence and information from people as close to the candidates in those states as possible. So we're grassroots. with a 7-person executive team, almost 40 state directors right now doing this work. And we've got a bunch of other little things that we do. But the bottom line for us is we've got to build this nation from the foundation up again. We've got to stop worrying about skimming water off the top of the swamp while they refill it from the bottom. We have to be the local politics that is promoted by merit up to the federal level. If you consider that a promotion, that's certainly an argument you can make that going there is not a promotion by any means. It could be a punishment. I've been asked to run against one of our state senators many times, and I tell them I have no desire to go to D.C. But one of the things we want to do is get involved heavily in things like clerk and recorder races, your county sheriff, school boards, and other local races to where you can get people in that truly want to serve this nation and not make it a career like a Joe Biden, who can do an entire adult lifespan and never serve this country once or never live real life once. And it's pretty sad as a nation that that's what we're going through. That's assuming you believe you won this election in the first place.
Yeah. Well, having 40 states that you guys are part of, that's a massive undertaking just in itself. And I'm very grateful that you guys have that kind of outreach and that kind of arm. We got to become watchmen. And we've got to hold these politicians accountable. And for you guys helping at your local level, at the school boards and the city councils and stuff like that, that's what we keep trying to encourage people here at LWN that, listen, it's time to get off the couch. It's time to really get in here. Somehow, some way you got to get involved at your local level, whether maybe you don't want to run for the school board, but you have a neighbor who does, and you think they'd be a good fit for the school board. Well, join their campaign team and go out there and help these people get elected, knock on doors, do what you can do to help the right people get elected. And, a lot of people listen to this show and some of them are getting involved. I have a lot of people that reach out to me and say, hey, Mike, I just went to a school board meeting for the very first time. And so I believe what we do here at LWN is making a difference. And a lot of times it just takes a lot of repetitive conversation about doing it and them seeing people like you showing up, Darin, and seeing that you're doing it, and it will breed courage in these people that are still out there at times hesitant to really to try to make a difference.
I like that term, the breeding of courage, and I think that is what people are really truly looking for. Not everybody is willing to be the person who's going to step up front and make the huge target of themselves, but as long as they come along eventually and are willing to partake in this fight because they recognize the need, then we're not going to stand by and judge that fact. That is for sure. But the least we can do is provide examples of that courage. I mean, that's, believe it or not, where I live here in Montana and Helena on the west side, I'm unhireable because I'm fighting for liberty. No one will hire me for a job, and I've proven that over and over again. But so be it. That doesn't mean I'm not going to do this. I have kids. I hope to have grandkids someday, and I think the future that I'm fighting for is theirs, not so much mine. I'm pretty happy at almost 50, to be honest. But I'm going to expend everything I've got left. I wasn't supposed to survive a lot of that time over in combat, so here we are. It's time to keep going. And on our website, and I'll hand it back to you for sure, but is the Practical Tacticals. Go to restore-liberty.org, look on the left side, look for Practical Tacticals, and that is a list of how you can get involved, and it's universal. Every state and every across the country, it applies to them.
So what exactly, in detail, what exactly does Restore Liberty do? I know you said that you guys get involved at your local level, but what exactly do you guys get involved with? And I'd like a little more detail, because I know there's somebody listening tonight that is just saying, okay, well, he gets involved at the local level, but what does that mean? How far do you go? Are you guys knocking on doors? Do you guys go to rallies? Do you guys go to the school board meeting and sit in on that and stand up and make your presence known and have input on those school board meetings, or county commissioners or city councils? What exactly are you guys getting involved at your local level?
Well, all the above. It depends on the state director in some ways, where specifically they're getting involved the most. So In one case, I'll use Mississippi for an example. She's a constitutional coach, certified through the Patriot Academy, and we can help arrange different events for her, or she'll arrange them herself to go out and educate people of all ages on the Constitution, what biblical citizenship means. That's one example. We share information and intelligence and get people into the school boards themselves and look at bills, look at laws in these different states. In some cases, we help write the legislation and draft it through the Freedom Caucus members in order to make sure that it is good legislation that will pass, that's effective against what it's supposed to be doing. The other way that we get involved in local politics is a very good example is we have a super PAC in Miami, Florida that we want to be able to build and fund to the point where it can counter the teachers unions in funding school board races. So rather than fighting an organization that's funded through your actual tax dollars, we build a super PAC that says we need to counter that narrative. And unfortunately, money is what it takes. So money is what we're going to ask for to fill that super PAC so we can do it. And we'll be strategic in how we do things. And, we coordinate with other organizations to help with that as well. Like all those who fought in Loudoun County, Virginia, we're connected to them very well. And how they were able to achieve some victory there, then we replicate it wherever we can. The other part that leads to the part where we are a coalition building organization. So if you're doing something very, very narrow and specific, but we're 100% in support of you and what you're doing, we're not going to try to recreate what you're doing. We're going to pull alongside you to help with some of our people and some of our mechanisms, the 501c3 and the C4, so we can endorse candidates and we can do educational work. And so we endorse candidates and put them out there in public so people can come to our website and find out who those endorsed candidates are. And hopefully over time, as I build trust with people, they know that those candidates are highly vetted, very good candidates. And if they fail us in some way, shape, or form through violations or problems in the future, we will withdraw that endorsement and make it very public.
Gotcha. So here's something that I wanted to ask you, Darin, because a lot of people freak out when we start talking money, and rightfully so. Rightfully so. We've been taught to follow the money, and that money can be very evil, but money is not the evil, folks. The love of money is what's evil. But you have to really, you got to be a realist here. You can't go up against, the cabal. You can't go up against deep state. You can't go up against the establishment and think that you can do it by not having fundraisers or by not having money. That's just ludicrous. And anybody who thinks that we can fight this war free and not have to go up against them financially, you're in the wrong camp, because that's not how this works. So when you talk about the super PAC in Florida and fighting the teachers union itself, when you've got somebody like the teachers union who has millions and millions of dollars that could crush any good America First candidate, we have to fight back financially. That is a huge, huge piece of the puzzle. And I know a lot of people don't like talking about it. A lot of people get frustrated or pissed off when I talk about it, and they make comments in chat about it. How are you going to win a battle if you can't fund it, and you can't buy armor, and you can't buy weapons, and you can't do anything? Honestly, you got to fly around the country. You got gas money when you're traveling and stuff. It's just, how do you, I guess, respond to the fact that when it comes to money, that's where a lot of people change. Maybe they are grassroots at first, and maybe they do have the best of intentions when they want to run for a senator or a congressman position. But once they get in the establishment and that money keeps coming in, it can really change people. So what do you say to that?
Well, there's a couple ways to address that. First of all, I hate even asking money for anything, because it makes a person kind of feel dirty if they've earned their way through their lifetime. So I certainly recognize that. Second of all, that's why I'm out there in the public space doing the best I can to build trust with people, so they know over time that I'm going to be one of those folks with this organization and the team behind me to keep me accountable. And we're not going to waste anything. We're not going to go into some city and buy $1 million houses and do something stupid with it. We want to raise money to be effective. And the third one would be, if you're going to get into the gladiator pits and your opponent has a sword, are you going to stand in some position and say, I don't want a sword, I just want sand, or I want a brick or something else. I don't want to fight with an equivalent type of weapon as my opposition has. So when Soros is spending billions of dollars to remove your liberty, conservatives need to be able to stand up and say, we're going to fund the ability to preserve liberty. And I have a statement I use often that's tied to that. That says, if conservatives funded liberty the way Marxists fund tyranny, this would be a different country.
It'd be over with by now. So can you go into maybe a little detail on the type of candidates that you guys are backing right now? Are there some popular ones? Because we got people that watch us all across the country, from Florida all the way up to New York, all the way across to California and up to Oregon, Washington, and every place in between. So are there some candidates out there that are should be on my listeners' radars to say, hey, these are America First candidates. These people believe in God. They believe in the freedom of religion and freedom of speech. They believe in the Second Amendment. Are there some spotlights that you can give my viewers tonight?
Yeah, and I don't think there's going to be too many surprises on, I guess, at the national scale. This is without looking at the website to get into more detail. But of course, we love Ron DeSantis and all he's doing. Is it perfect? Of course not. But if you're looking for a national figure who's willing to put his face, his voice, and everything on the line in public, he's going to do it. Doug Mastriano in Pennsylvania, who I've talked to, is a no-brainer for us as well. And so those are definitely some of the bigger pictures. Down in Texas, you got Ellen Troxclair. In Florida, you've got Dan Franzese. And all of these are on our website. Those are definitely folks worth looking at. One of our state directors ran for Secretary of State in Washington, and the Land of Dominion, of course, still working through that issue, to say the least. And then without going into specific names, we had 14 endorsed candidates in Colorado, from state Senate, Secretary of State, and then a whole bunch of people inside El Paso County, which is Colorado Springs. And all of them lost pretty much the same way in the primary, using the Dominion systems, and suspicious at best, I guess you could say. So we're in the center of that fight because everybody in Restore Liberty is the middle of that particular fight in Colorado. So it's a big thing to watch. And without having the website in front of me, there was a lot more. We've done about 70-something candidates across the country, and no matter whether they have a chance of winning in accordance with the normal calculations, we're going to endorse the right person no matter what.
That's great, Darin. And I like that philosophy. We're going to endorse the right candidate no matter what. We're not going to endorse the Republican Rhino or anyone else just because they have an R behind their name, or you guys claim to be nonpartisan. So I don't know if that means you also help fund Democrats. But here's something that I found interesting when we were all in Missouri at the 2022 Truth Summit. Those machines are probably one of the biggest problems out there when it comes to election integrity. And we're going to go ahead and talk about this tonight. And I'm just going to have to take this down off of YouTube because I know they'll come after us, but that's fine. We got time, and we'll push it over to Rumble. So it'll be up on Rumble if you guys want to catch it over there on Rumble. We learned a lot at that Truth Summit. My first time to anything like that. And there was so much information coming out. The first day, all 50 states showed up and was giving us the rundown on the evidence that they found with all the inconsistencies throughout all the states, every county in America. And boy, believe me, after I spent 12 hours listening to all that stuff, I found out really quick. They do a lot of it right in front of your face, and a lot of people don't even realize it. And then you factor in the machines on top of that, and everything that we saw that came out of the movie, 2,000 Mules, and then the movie that we watched there at the Truth Summit, and all the other stuff that's coming out. My son Hunter, there's so much information and so much proof and evidence, because I have critics that actually say that proof is different than evidence and evidence is different than proof. And it's just crazy that there's so much of that stuff out there for you to see and for you to get your hands on, and people still don't believe that it happened.
Yeah, and I guess ultimately, for those of us who have the biblical Judeo-Christian worldview, this really shouldn't come as a surprise. It's just sad to see. But as an individual, of course, I was invited to both Mike Lindell's first summit and this second summit, where we got to see ES&S machines and Dominion machines hacked by people we know personally with cell phones within minutes. So that's not in question. And we could go through and I guess lay out all of it again, because it's all out there in massive numbers and quantities, like you mentioned. But I guess I like to bring it back to a central question or a central theme, which is one, the first real claim made in this election that mattered was this was the most secure election in history. Okay, prove it. You made the claim. You have the onus on you to prove that fact, and they have come nowhere near proving that. In fact, they've hit everything. Second of all, if you're confident in that statement, then you should be the first person to tell everybody across the country to break open those machines, lay them all out like you would with most any other state digital system that you're required to have high security systems on. Put it all out there. Show everybody everything. Stand up in courage and say, you know what? I'm so confident in my statement that this was the most secure election in history that I'm going to show you the smallest detail to the biggest. Because if they did that and the results were the same, then so be it. Correct. We've got some work to do. We've got some things to fix. Education, work, you name it. It's all there. They know it's not going to come back.
If they came out tomorrow and they laid all their cards on the table and they showed us everything and it all jived and the numbers were all correct and the numbers from the machines coincided with the number of voters, I'd shut up. I'd quit talking about it. I'd say, all right, he won. But here's the difference, Darin. The difference is, and I learned this just in the last, 2 or 3 days. And I'm going to keep saying it because I absolutely love this statement. A lie they have to protect, and truth stands alone. So why are they protecting these machines? Why are they protecting these people? Why? Because it's a lie. Because it's not truth. And here's the other thing. You said one of the statements made was this was the most fair election of all time. Here's another statement that I know a lot of us forget about it because it gets lost in all the stuff that's happening in our world. That certain person stood and sat in front of the television and said, we have created the most comprehensive election fraud team in American history, end quote.
Yeah, that was not a slip of the tongue. That was an admission of guilt. And the rats were scurrying out of the light pretty quickly on that one. And so there's no way, given everything that is out there right now, that anybody could walk away from the conclusion saying that this is the most secure election in history. Absolutely no way, unless you're complicit, ignorant, or you're just generally okay with these results, which all three of those are bad. So we have to keep fighting that for sure. But we also have to be careful. Like any organization or like any effort, there are a lot of hopium merchants out there. And they're going to tell you things like, trust the plan. Well, show me the plan. Otherwise, you're doing the same things as the machine owners are. You're telling me to trust in something that you won't show me. They're talking about things like, hey, Trump's in the Southern White House and it's all going to be okay because Trump's going to come back and save you. No, he's not. You got to save yourself. In fact, if Trump were standing here, I guarantee you he'd say the same thing. It's your job to save yourself with your community and band together with all of your friends and your neighbors and come together and do the work that we've been ignoring. And I put myself in that. I'm weak. We've been ignoring for years and trusting in our government to do the things that are right for us and have our best interests at heart. All too often, they do not. The rare occasion they do, and they are rare. But right now, the only way to fix this is not with one president. It's with 300 million citizens.
Well, here's something else. As you were talking, I was thinking about here. I know a lot of people, and I agree with your statement about The only person that is going to save your liberty or your freedoms is yourself. I believe that with all my heart, and that's why I keep telling people, hey, God has won the battle, but we still have to do our part no matter what. It's just like Trump. He's doing his part, but we still have to do ours as well. He's only one man. He can only do so much. So it's up to us to get out there and get busy and do what needs to be done. And that's getting involved at your local level, just so some of the critics there in chat can't twist my words, because I don't believe in going kinetic. I believe in using the law of the land, and I believe that we can win by doing that. So what is something that we could really focus on for our listeners tonight? What can we really focus on? Because, November is just right around the corner. It's just a couple of months away, and the days are numbered and they're ticking down, and we've got an election on our hands called the midterms. So what advice and what kind of encouragement could you give the listeners tonight to get involved at their local level and to really be watchmen and to ensure that even if these guys do cheat, that it's all caught on camera, it's all evidence, and we use it against them? That's all I can say.
Yeah. In fact, I talked about this last night. I'm the Lewis and Clark County GOP chairman here in Montana because, the Republican Party in Montana is different than in many states. That's for sure. Not perfect, but we have a lot of good people, and we're trying to fix it, the Republican Party from the bottom up as well. And so one of the things that you can do is be a poll watcher, be an election judge. And if you're neither one of those two, throw a block party and watch every single ballot box that's around you on video. Know your state laws, know your restrictions, know what you can and can't do. I, like you, agree with we have to win by obeying and observing the laws that we do have. This is not a kinetic fight. This is a fight using our contract, the Constitution, and the parts and pieces that go into that all the way down to the local level. So watch every ballot box. Get out there and support the candidates you love. If you don't like the Republican Party for a variety of reasons, and so many of those reasons are very, very good, don't give money to a committee. Give money to a candidate that you support. I say that even here, running the committee, I fully support writing a check directly to a candidate. Get out there and knock on a door for them. Get out there and do research for them. If you're not the kind of person who wants to knock on a door and talk to people at random, then go in and expose people to the truth of their opposition. If there's things there that need to be known. I think there's a difference between negative campaigning and telling people the truth about someone who's in political office, who's supposed to serve them and is taking money from overseas or any number of organizations that you can't and shouldn't trust. Start with that over this next 60 days or so, and then keep going. Run this thing like a marathon, and even though we know that at times we're going to have to sprint, and then stay involved. Never give up, because they're not going to give up on you. Politics is something you may not be interested, but it's certainly very interested in you.
I like your thought process there, Darin, and I've said this, and I'll keep saying it over and over and over again. Even if we were to win these midterms by an absolute landslide, which I believe is very possible that we do that, what happens, and I'm guilty of doing this as well in the past, is these people, they get in office, and once they're elected, we kind of just go about our busy lives and we forget about them, and until 4 years later when they need our vote again. And then we start worrying about, well, what did they do for the last 4 years? I don't even know what they did for the last 4 years because we're busy. We're living life. And I try to encourage my listeners that we have to become watchmen. And I mean, from the time that they're elected till the last day they leave office and we replace them, we have to hold these people accountable. We have to know what their voting record is. We have to know who's funding them, who they're taking money from. Because like you said, if they're taking money from outside influencers, different countries, people that we don't align with, then it's time to move on. It's time to remove them from office. And I don't believe in career politicians either. I've asked this question many a times, and I have about a 50-50 answer. So term limits, and how do we enact term limits? Some people say, well, it's never going to happen. Term limits are never going to happen because they'll never vote on it. But isn't it up to us, we the people, to determine those term limits? And then I have 50% of the people say, hey, I think we can really get it done. We need to have term limits. And what I believe is a fair term limit is nothing past a 10-year. Honestly, if the president can only serve 8 years, I don't think anyone else should be able to serve more than 8 to 10 years. These career politicians, like you mentioned, Joe Biden, 40, 48, 49 plus years, never accomplished a thing, never worked a real job, even though he claims that he did when he was in Scranton. He never did. Nancy Pelosi, another career politician, 40 plus years. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on and on. I mean, longer than my arm. So I believe it is up to we, the people, to ensure that these term limits are not only brought about, but enacted, and that they follow, these politicians follow it to a T. I believe, and I heard somebody else, this is not my idea, but I heard somebody else say this, there should be a contract with their constituents. There should be a signed contract with each politician that I am going to run in 2022, and when my term is up in 2030, I sign the contract, I'm done, period. It doesn't matter where I'm at in legislation. If there's a bill that we're working on, I guess I have to walk away from it. We get new blood in there. I think it's very important that we focus on term limits.
Oh, I agree. There's different mechanisms to do that, but ultimately how you get there can be debated. But I'm a firm believer that a member of Congress should do 3 or 4 terms max. Maybe you make 3 terms. That way you're equal to 1 term of a sitting senator, and a senator should do two max, and 12-year mark. Personally, when I was asked to run by a lot of people against our local senator here, I told him many times that if I did that, I would be extremely dangerous in D.C. because I would do as much as I could for 6 years and walk away. I'm a firm believer that politicians should be subject to the bills they pass.
Amen. Amen. That's a great point too, Darin, because a lot of them are above the law, and we know that. We see Nancy Pelosi above the law with her husband and the insider trading. I just saw a comment in chat that's really good too, something that we should talk about before our hour's up here. Paper ballots, and how do we get back to the old school way of doing things where we have paper ballots and everything is counted the night of the election. No more machines. Get rid of all the machines. And like I had another guest on a while back, a couple weeks ago, they said, hey, counting paper ballots is easy because you're not counting 40 million ballots all in one area. You're broken down into counties. And so each county is counting those ballots. So paper ballots can and should be counted on election night, and we should be able to get back to another great comment from Deborah there. Paper ballots and IDs. If you don't have an ID, you don't vote. If you're not a citizen, you don't vote. Your thoughts?
Other things, why not to do the most important function in this country, which is vote for your own representative? That seems like a no-brainer, and it seems very simple. Personally, my opinion is that in order to win that fight, though, you have to do it county by county across the country and get with your county commission, and they have to get rid of the machines, and they have to go to paper ballots, because we know the federals are not going to do this. They're not interested. Most states are not going to do this. They're not interested either. But I had a very good conversation on this exact topic with someone here in Montana from Billings, which is our most populous city in the state. And they were concerned about a resolution to declare Biden an illegitimate president based on the election results. And the statement in there was that we needed to go forward and just do all paper ballots, get rid of the machines. And they were concerned about not having the time to count. And I had to educate them a little bit because they were in their mid-20s or so of age. And I said, what do you think they did for decades before the machines? They counted them by hand, and they were always on time. And now we count them by machines, and they're always conveniently late in certain locations. So this is how you diffuse the risk of an overreaching government, is by having counties do this, rather than a centralized structure of the machines going all the way up and hackable and subject to anybody who wants to go into that machine and mess with it. The second all that I told him was, or that was really important that people don't generally understand or really grasp is the fact that these precincts in a county with a committee generally don't have a purpose too much right now. One of their primary purposes was to count those paper ballots. One Democrat, one Republican, one, pick one of the other parties. It doesn't matter who they are. That got people directly involved in the results of the elections by verifying that paper ballot in front of them, and the precincts reported to the county reported to the state, and on up. You can spread out the risk among 3,500 or so counties. You can get people involved at their county and precinct level where they should have been the entire time. I think that's absolutely critical. But how you do that is holding your county commission's feet to the fire.
We've had some great conversation tonight, Darin, and things that the listeners have heard over and over again. But it's great to see somebody who's actually in the action, doing, putting action behind their words and getting involved, because that's what it's going to take. I see a lot of great comments out there, a lot of great ideas, and things that we've been tossing around for quite a while. But truly the only person that can make a difference in any of this is yourself, is people getting out there and really paying attention and getting involved and being that difference. We have to be that difference, not only for ourselves, folks, but we have to be that difference for our children. We have to be that difference for our grandchildren, because if we don't do it, no one else is. And that happens quite often in life. What do they say? The only person that can do it is good enough as you, or whatever that saying is. I know I chopped it all up, but it's something that is a passion of mine. It's something that I will continue to encourage my listeners to do, is to really just get out there and get involved. And you're going to find out real quick what it's all about. Cammie has worked a couple of times now. I know she worked in the last election. And she actually ran one of those machines, and she found out real quick what it was about. And, I believe that is the key points that need to happen. Is the machines need to go bye-bye. We need to get back to paper ballots, and we need to hand count everything and have it done by the end of election night. And this whole, we got to pause it in the middle of the night, we'll count again tomorrow. We gotta wait, there's more ballots coming in. Nope. The ballots aren't in on election night. It's a done deal. Your vote don't count. Sorry. If you don't show up for work and you don't click into the old time clock there, you don't get paid. So this whole apparatus that the left uses, that we're trying to suppress the vote and that we're trying to take votes away from people, that's not true. If you vote on time, then your vote counts. But you don't get to show up a week later and still vote. That's just not how it works. So that's just my thoughts.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And, I did see a comment really quickly flash through, or a couple of comments that I thought worth mentioning a couple things on. One of them was that, these lettered agencies and so many employees, specifically within the federal government, seem to be there forever. And that's one of the reasons that Trump actually did scare a lot of folks, is because he wants to pursue at-will employment, which means they can be gotten rid of easily. And like any other business, you fail to perform, you get your walking papers. That seems pretty simple to us. As a military veteran, I recognize the fact that I was a government employee, but I can promise you one thing. I was at work at 5 a.m. and didn't leave until 8 o'clock at night routinely. And that's if I was in the United States. It's just a fact of life. You have to perform. The other one is that there was a person who mentioned that our country is founded on God, family, and country. And you will not get any argument from me. In fact, I say that if you're right with God, then your family will benefit. If you're right with God and family, your country will follow along behind and be solid, regardless of what it is. Our Constitution was only crafted for a good and moral people. And so one of our efforts within Restore Liberty right now is, and I've already done the first one, is I wrote Federalist 86 to pick up where the Founding Fathers left off with 85. And we're going to crowdsource people writing 2-page documents that are the Federalist Papers of today. And when you look at Federalist 86 that I wrote, it talks about the fact that if we don't get back as a nation to God, family to be in the foundation with the country to follow, then we're going to join the list of banana republics, and the church will be persecuted, and it will survive and thrive regardless of that. That is for sure. But, that's why I wrote 86, and I called it Foundations. Those are the three things we've got to get back to, and they're in order of priority. Yep.
The three pillars that make America. As we roll into final thought here, that was beautiful, Darin. Beautiful, beautiful thing that you had there, and I'm gonna leave my final thought on those three things that you talk about. But I'm gonna let you go ahead and go first. What is it that you would like to leave the audience either knowing about yourself or Restore Liberty or homework that they should do? Just whatever you choose for your final thought tonight. I know that a lot of people are listening and they've enjoyed the show this evening, and I've enjoyed the conversation. I definitely would like to have you come back on. I'd like to know more about these Federalist papers that you're talking about that you wrote, number 86. I'd like to go into detail about that. I think it's important for people to understand that the founding fathers are not the only people that can continue that work. A lot of people think that the founding fathers did that 245 years ago and that's it. No, we can continue their work, and we can do, like you said, write these documents and help reshape America into what it used to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe even better, because nothing's ever perfect. And we knew that. Our founding fathers had many lessons for us, and some of them is a simple fact that they wrote this document with great ideals, and they often failed to meet them themselves. But that's not the problem of the ideal. It's the problem of the people who fail to meet them. And we're all going to fail to meet them. So we should at least try, because we'll all improve regardless. And that's the first thing. The second thing would be that emphasize the message of peace across the country, everywhere we live, no matter what. Because we can anticipate sometime through September and October, they're going to have something that happens that, these are MAGA people or whatever, or America First folks that are patriots that are creating something, a riot or some sort of fake violence. We all have to emphasize the message of peace and lawful conduct, because that's us. The opposition are the peaceful protesters who happen to burn things while they're doing it. And I think that's absolutely critical. If you want to know more about that Federalist 86 and what we're trying to do, just send us an email at patriots@restore-liberty.org, and we'll answer it with the document. We're going to build it into our website soon, but we want to narrow down those topics. If someone wants to write on education, if someone wants to write on three-letter agencies, whatever those things are, whatever your passion is, write 2 pages on it. We'll work through it, and we want to really create something that is us taking back the written word and creating a track record of what it means to restore liberty across this country the right way. Because if we can do that, it'll last. We do not want to do anything that's violent by any stretch of the imagination. But as a military veteran, I promise you, I've seen it all. We do not want to do here what happens frequently overseas, because everybody suffers. And I go back to that word on the Liberty Bell, and in that verse, that is for all citizens, not just some.
Amen. Thanks for sharing that with us, Darin. And our brother Devil Dog, he always likes to drop this at the end of the show when he's around, and it's true. If you don't know your rights, you don't know what to protect. That's a great final thought. But to add to your final thought, don't let them define us, folks. We are not the movement of violence. We are the movement of grace, but we're also firm. We're courageous. We're brave. And we will not allow them to define us. But the one thing that I want to leave with tonight is, yes, I agree with you 100%. We need to put God back in this country, and we need to have God first, family second, and country. And all three of those need to align with God, with the Word of God, with our faith in God. And that's what made this country so great over 200 years ago, is that's how our founding fathers chose to build this country. And in the last 100 years, we've really come away from it, and we've taken God out of everything, and you can see where it gets us today. So thanks for sharing that with us, Darin. Thank you guys for being with us tonight. It was such a pleasure. Thank you for all the stars over there on Facebook and all the support you guys are giving us. Truly appreciate it. I will love to have Darin come back again, and we'll go into a little more detail on some of these Federalist papers and stuff. because I think it's important for us to know our history and know that it doesn't have to stop right there. Darin, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Mike, it's been a pleasure and honor, and I'm happy to come back anytime for sure.
All right. Well, that's it for tonight, folks. I'll be back tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time with devotions. I'll be back tomorrow evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the big show. Love you all. God bless, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Hoping for a